لو سمحت ما تنساش تشترك في القناة ولايك للفيديو وشير علشان تشجعني اقدم لك معرفة اكتر ليك ولغيرك من المشاهدين. شكرا.
do for the thing is this, that it would create in the minds of the general public, solidly set in the mind of the general public, an unwavering trust in that great deception. In other words, people could, they would believe it. This person was hypnotized, was regressed in time to, former lives, and did this and did that, and no deception. Maybe Alexander the Great, we'll say, and some of his generals and people like that. And the person, after the session is over, comes out of hypnotism, and he or she doesn't know what she's talking about. So now this would be a way of de-Christianizing the Western world through the avenue of mysticism. Mm. Now the time came when Lucifer decided that he had to choose a person to initiate this thing. And Franz Mesmer, which was an Austrian physician, was chosen. Because
now, the priest told you all of this?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Because he was most capable. Yeah. Mesmer originated a theory called animal magnetism, later on named mesmerism. Mesmer was led by the spirits to believe, and this is what the priest said, was led by the spirits to believe that certain persons have a magnetic influence within themselves, so to speak, that would cause them to have great power over other persons, even to the point of placing them into a trance. And at that time, that was readily accepted by people in general, at the time that Mesmer lived. So people realized, that some people got the capacity to put you into a trance. That's the way. Now, by the time that he died, in 1815, a lot of the physicians in Europe were using hypnotism as a means of anesthesia.
Now, hypnotism is the same as mesmerism?
That's right.
Okay.
So mesmerism that's been developed to a higher degree of refinement. And the priest went on saying that the plan of Satan to deceive the human family this way, he says, is the most intriguing thing to his mind. And he went on saying how it was going to be brought about. He said that a fellow by the name of Darwin and another fellow by the name of Thomas Henry Huxley would be used by the spirits because in their childhood they had been hypnotized by medical doctors, and they figured that they would be real good subjects to lead the people into this belief that they had, that Satan wanted to bring into people's lives.
Now, what were those 3 points again, Roger? The three things were, number one, that they did not want Satan did not want the human family to think that he or his angels existed.
Right.
The second point that you made had to do with taking control of people's minds.
That's right.
The third point was what?
Was to destroy the Bible without burning it.
Okay.
See?
And what was his strategy on that?
On that, it was very interesting. Because after the Great General Council, it was decided that Satan would tutor Charles Darwin personally in setting up the principles of his theories of evolution. He was tutored by Lucifer himself, fallen Lucifer. And at that time, it was understood, Satan and his spirit counselors understood, that if a person was led to believe in the theory of evolution, it would, in his life, destroy completely the creation week of the Bible, the fall of man, and the plan of redemption. It would do away with it.
In one fell swoop.
Yeah. Now, he made a unique statement. He said that according to the spirits, anyone that teaches a theory of evolution is considered to be a minister of a great religious system. See, they call it the religious system, the theory of evolution, because it is a system of schooling people and getting them to disqualify themselves from being members of Christ's kingdom. And he said that every teacher of that theory is recognized by the spirits as a person of great value and receives a very special unction from Satan himself, giving great power to induce spiritual blindness, to convince and convert. 3 capacities are given to those teachers of the theory. Then, that's not all. The priest says that Satan considers the teachers of the theory of evolution to be so valuable to him that in the sight of all the inhabitants of the galaxies, he assigns a retinue of bright, beautiful angels to follow that educator all the remainder of his life. And that in the sight of the inhabitants of the galaxies is the greatest honor that he can bestow upon his workers, upon mankind, and to, until the controversy is finished. That was quite enlightening.
Now the high priest was talking just sort of like a preacher would talk up front. Was he enthusiastic? Did he seem like he had bought into this and was excited about it?
Oh yeah, he believed it 100%, no question about it, everything.
Why would he be so excited about spirits trying to deceive human beings? Because obviously out of this council of the 1700s, deception was a major part of the strategy. Why?
Well, he says it's deception. It's like politics. You believe in one candidate, the other person believes in the other candidate, and they're fighting to get the position, and it's just a matter of who's going to be the smartest. And with Lucifer, the fallen cherubim, he's very smart. He's going to win, and Christ's going to abdicate the rights of the planet. He's going to resurrect his people, have established his kingdom that lasts for ever and ever. God won't be able to destroy him because it would be against God's, the Creator's nature to destroy Lucifer in the fire. Decided, he said, spirits now, human spirits, have the capacity now to outlive fire. He says, you don't believe it, go to India or some of those countries where they have firewalkers. And it's done by the power of the human spirits. These people are energized by human spirits so they can walk on those hot coals without burning themselves.
And this is what the high priest said. And
he says, if they want to use fire, they can use it. It's not going to burn anybody. So that's the way they believe.
This high priest was almost talking to your group in an evangelistic fervor.
Oh yeah, because he figures that he's going to be one of the higher ups in the great kingdom.
Okay. Now, of the group that was there that night, 60, 70 people, I think you've mentioned before.
Yeah, it varied.
How many of those were people who were hardcore members, and how many of them were new inductees?
Well, we were the only two youngsters there, so to speak.
You and your friend. And how old were you at that time, Roger?
I was about 20.
20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 20 years old.
Did you have a feeling of awe over the fact that you had been chosen?
Yes, in a way. And then I got thinking about this. When am I going to have to pay the price? The cost. My parents had brought me up like this. If you get involved with evil, you're going to reap what you sowed. So you want to be upright in life. And if you associate with evildoers, they'll probably land you in jail or somewhere else that you wouldn't want to be. So there's always a price to be paid.
So you had that little something maybe instilled by your mother and father a long time ago that kept you from making that full commitment.
Now, one of the things that really amazed me and shocked me and made me sick at heart is when the priests talk about Christian idolatry.
What is Christian idolatry? The priest mentioned that word. Tell us what he said, Roger.
He said that Christian idolatry is the most grandiose or great deception that has ever been brought upon the human family, upon mankind. And he says, and he boasted, that demon spirits are continually defiling Christian churches through the avenue of necromancy by using a form of spirit worship that involves hundreds of millions of Christians into idolatry without their being aware of it.
Now, what is necromancy? Describe or define necromancy for me.
Their belief, popular belief of necromancy, is to conjure the spirits of the dead.
So that you can speak with someone who has died.
Right.
Like the seance that you originally went to was the practice of necromancy.
Yeah. Now, the priest says that the super deception is brought about in only one way. Through the deceptive belief that man has an immortal soul that lives on after death. And he said that constitutes idolatry through necromancy. So he says there are hundreds of millions of Christians that are practicing idolatry while they think they're glorifying God. See?
Because they believe that the soul is immortal.
Yeah.
They may not be talking to the supposed spirits of the dead.
Oh, yeah. Contrary to popular belief, necromancy does not consist of conjuring the spirits of the dead. The reason being that man is totally mortal and does not possess an immortal soul. So, who are they talking to? He says, the friendly demon spirits that have always found over the centuries great delight in impersonating in apparitions departed loved ones and persons of great renown.
Now, friendly demon spirits.
Friendly demon spirits.
Are there more than one kind of demon spirits, Roger?
Well, there's three main divisions, and then there's divisions within those divisions. You have the friendly demon spirits that seem to have the finesse and the refinement, and they're not upset about what happened when they were thrown out of heaven, from what I gather. Then you have the warriors. They like to bring misery and destruction in the lives of people. Then you have the oppressors. And the oppressors are the real wicked spirits that hate God with all of their, the Creator with all of their might, you know. So he went on explaining. He says, now, necromancy is in reality a belief, a religious belief. People believe that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence than they had when they were alive. Also that they are in a position and have the capacity to help the living here on earth. See? Then he said, he says this is where things get really interesting. He said, according to the great master, a person does not have to supposedly call upon the spirits of the dead to receive help, you see, to be involved in necromancy. All he needs to do is to believe in life after death. Because he said, necromancy is the belief that man as a human being has an immortal soul. So anybody that believes that man has an immortal soul is involved in necromancy. It's that simple. That's the way he explained it. Yeah.
So how does that constitute idolatry?
By people believing that they are either talking to the saints, you see, the spirits of the dead saints, or a dead relative, or a dead person of some type. And you take, for instance, like Loretta Lynn. She says on national television, and I have the data on it, that I heard it myself. She said that she was made successful in her singing career by a dear friend of hers that was the same age as she, and died when she was 18 years of age. And Loretta was trying to get into the singing world, you know, but she says, I had no success at all. Until one night I was sitting in bed reading a book. And she says, who walks right through the wall but my friend, the spirit of my friend? And she says, Loretta, I'm going to make you a very famous person in singing Western country music, and I will be with you all the time. Trust me. And she says she had a big concert once, and she was coming down with this bad cold. And she thought that her voice was going to give. She talked to her spirit and felt that she was going to be helped. And she got on the stage and she started to sing, and right in the middle of where she really needed the power, no power at all. And her spirit friend tapped her on the shoulder and started to sing for her. She said her voice went through me. The power. See?
And you saw this in a television documentary?
Yeah. That was, I believe, in 1976 it took place. Now, the priest explained that when people believe in this business, they are actually opening themselves to be completely deceived by demon spirits, because it gives the demon spirits an opportunity to impersonate the dead, see, and for people to believe their lies. And the priest says that thrills first of all, it says it brings to the great master the respect and the reverence that is due to his great name. And it makes all the other spirits exceedingly happy, because they are the ones that have worked to lead people to believe in life after death. You see? And they rejoice also. And that's the extent of what
Christian idolatry is all about. Friendly spirits, just to digress for just a moment. You mentioned 3 different categories, and the friendly spirits are the ones that love to impersonate being a historian or something.
We specialize in that.
In your experiences in the praise services or in the worship room or the other places where you were, any of the places you were, did you ever witness an event where necromancy or even something that would be popularly called channeling today took place, where you actually heard the voice of someone in response to someone's questions?
Yeah, a number of times, but there was one time in particular that fascinated me because it was unique in one way. The priest told us that there was a French historian that was affiliated with Montreal, University of Montreal, which is a French university, and the English university is McGill. So the University of Montreal is the French university. And this man was from Paris, but he's affiliated with the university. And he wanted to have some details in regards to Napoleon Bonaparte and one of his generals. So, by the way, there are also in other parts of the world elite spirit worshippers like the group that we had in Montreal. And he mentioned there that he said, you guys are fortunate when my friend and I went in, because you're right in time to see something very interesting. My friend there is having his devotions in the worship room of the gods, and he will use a trance medium to converse with certain demon spirits that will inform him in regards to ancient history about Napoleon. And sure enough, we went down there, and somebody came up and said he's ready for the session, and we went down there, and he said you would need 3 people. You would need 3 people, but he wanted 5 people that volunteer to be the channel for the spirit. Okay, so three of them were chosen there, and the others went back and sat down. And the man shook his head a little bit like this. His eyes went glazed, and he stayed at it for a half hour. And the spirit spoke to him. He said, I'm a spirit counselor, and what would you like to know? And he had a clipboard, the historian, and asked him some questions.
This historian was from Paris.
Yeah.
And he was wanting information,
some detailed information
about Napoleon
Bonaparte and one of his generals.
And so he asked the questions of one of these human beings that was channeling.
Oh yeah, the voice changed and everything. The voice changed of the person completely.
Okay. And it identified itself as a spirit guide.
Oh, yeah. Spirit counselor, yeah.
Okay, a spirit counselor. And then proceeded to tell him all the events that he was asking, answer his questions?
And there was a certain question that was asked, and the spirit counselor said, I will have Lord Remy and Lord Alphonse duplicate, in other words, the dialogue that had taken place.
Oh,
and the two other
drama.
Yeah, and the 2 other men fulfilled what he was looking for. But the one thing that interests me is the mayor of Montreal, Cavalier Hood. During World War II, at the beginning of the war, he was very controversial when it regards to the war effort. You would tell the French-speaking boys not to go into the armed service, you see, because you're going to go and shed your blood for the British, you know, and we're their servants, so to speak, and all that, and you didn't want them to go into war, and they put him in prison. He was jailed for the length of the war. For this now, the man said, I would like to have you tell me to the Spirit to give me part of the speech that was given by Chameleon Hood on the steps of the Montreal City Hall on a certain date. There are different versions of what has taken place, and you, Lord, would know the exact one.
Now, the mayor of Montreal was still alive.
Was still alive.
And this historian is asking what was actually said at a speech.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Spirit Counselor said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. All of my activities and my people have taken place in Europe. However, after my departure, our departure, other spirits will come and help you. And sure enough, the guy vibrated a little bit, and he's back, and he said, boy, how long? He said, 20 minutes, you've been used as a channel. So they, again, the Spirit entered into him, and the Spirit said he was a Spirit Counselor that could give him the information that he was looking for. So, again, it was given verbally, and it was the voice of Chameleon Hood.
Now, how did you know that it was the voice?
Well, because of the fact, you see, I was a youngster in those days, just about ready to go into the army. And Chameleon, we used to listen to the radio. We had no television in those days, so it was only radio, and read newspaper. And all the speeches of Chameleon made, and all of it was on the radio all the time. Now, in those days, they had no tape recorders, as we have now. So Chameleon would have to go to the Canadian Broadcasting Studio, where they made a record, a real phonograph record. And then they played it over and over, for the rest of the day.
So you listened to those as a teenager before you went into the army, so you knew his voice.
So I knew his voice really good. So I said to George, he was sitting next to me, he said, isn't it amazing? He said, if you think that's amazing, wait, he says, until the spirits impersonate one of the departed people that you know, personally, like an uncle or a brother or a sister or something like that. He says, that is unique. But that's the way it was. You are able to reproduce a voice, man, and just to perfection. The spirits are exceedingly proud of this. Because, and this also was right up my alley, the priest said that as the times on this planet gets more and more difficult, and calamities of all kinds are striking the planet more and more frequently, demon spirits are going to impress people with the importance of Sunday sacredness.
Roger, when I was a teenager back in the 1970s, I remember a song that came out talking about the age of Aquarius. And since then, we've seen the development of the New Age, and I wondered if back when you were involved in spirit worship, if they talked about New Age at all.
Oh yes, it was a big thing that was coming up. One of the major deceptions of the last days. And the priest told us, we talked for quite a while, and then he said, could I have a little bit more? Your time I want to do something very fascinating. He says, the grand plan, the master's grand plan for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. So we continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grand plan is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because he says spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it. And he went on saying that they will claim to have out-of-body experiences. Are you familiar with out-of-body experiences?
I've read about them.
In other words, so persons, there's some persons are supposed to be able to, you know, they believe in their immortal soul.
Astral projection.
Yes, right. Goes into different parts of the world and sees things and come back, and then they write all about it. You know.
I've heard of that.
So, due to the fact that the millions of the earth people believe in people having an immortal soul, it has to be readily accepted when the spirits will, through a trance medium, converse with influential people of the land, you see.
Now, what is a trance medium?
It's a channeler today.
What is known today as a channeler?
Channeler, yeah.
Okay.
Shirley MacLaine's experience of getting involved with spiritism and with the inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies. I taped the whole thing. It's 3 hours.
And you were hearing the fulfillment of
Exactly.
what this high priest had said 45 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So he went on explaining about the fact that the spirits will show themselves willing to give valuable guidance that will not only help people avoid the destruction of the planet, but it would cause them to enter into a higher state of existence. For instance, he said the spirits will promise, and this is a big word, promise, that if their recommendations are followed carefully, they will usher in a glorious new age of peace and prosperity, and there'll be there'll be no more wars. See, there'll be no more famines. There'll be no more people getting unhappy with one another. Neighbors will love neighbor, and social unrest will not take place no more. There'll be perfect happiness for 1,000 years. That's what the Spirit is going to promise. And
almost like the Garden of Eden created all over again.
And now we find that a lot of preachers are preaching the great age of glorious new age of victory over wars, victory over social unrest, victory over famines, and victory over all kinds of...
and he used the words new age to describe what was coming.
It would be a glorious new age, yeah. And this is exactly what the movement is all about today. And he went on and said, as I said a little earlier, that as life on this planet becomes more and more difficult, and calamities will strike the planet more and more frequently, the spirits at that time are going to put all their effort to impress religious leaders, to bring before the masses of the earth the sacredness of Sunday. See? They will teach Sunday sacredness. And with the religious leaders, looking forward to 1,000 years of perfect peace on earth, they will put all their effort into it. Then laws will be passed by governments. When one person asks, what's going to happen about people that don't believe in the Spirit's recommendation? The priest says, that's no problem at all. Laws will be passed by governments that will force people to go along with it, regardless of whether they believe in it or not. And he says the law enforcement officers will explain to people, make it clear that such a law is necessary to assure the well-being of all people. He says the laws will be passed with no effort at all. And then he went on and he said about the fact that the venerability of the sun, which in ages past was such an irritant to the Creator. All these great nations and other nations, the smaller ones, were all involved in sun worship. And in those centuries, the Creator found that teaching of worship of the sun to be a terrible irritant. And he said, it is going again to take place, but not in worshiping the sun, in remembering Sunday to keep it holy. He made a statement I will never forget. He says, by the observance of the day upon which the master, Satan, has placed the unction of his authority and power, see, he receives homage, regardless of whom people claim to worship. Isn't that something? So, can you understand now why I had 28 Bible studies in 1 week and started to go to church on Sabbath? And I never missed since until I became sick.
The issue of a day of worship came up in that meeting. Was Sunday the only day mentioned?
Well, you see, the priest mentioned, yes, about the fact Satan has chosen Sunday as his day. The Creator has chosen the seventh day of the week. Lucifer has chosen to call his day the first day of the week, Sunday. See? And regardless of what people claim to worship, they're worshiping God, the Creator, by observing that day, that particular day, they are bringing homage and respect.
Now, at that time in your life, you were 20 years old or so. Had you ever heard of a Seventh-day Adventist?
Never in my life.
In that meeting...
He didn't talk about Seventh-day Adventist. He talked strictly about Adventist.
Well, they just talked... But they did... The word Adventist was mentioned.
The priest was telling us that necromancy, as I mentioned earlier, is the belief that the dead have entered into a higher state of existence, etc. And he says, for centuries, friendly demon spirits have worked diligently to establish and uphold in the religious convictions of all people the belief that man has an immortal soul. See? Then he boasted about the fact that the master was so smart and that he had deceived the whole world, even in this age of great scientific knowledge and understanding. Then one person put his hand up.
لو سمحت ما تنساش تشترك في القناة ولايك للفيديو وشير علشان تشجعني أقدم لك معرفة أكتر ليك ولغيرك من المشاهدين. شكرا.
The priest said, you're right. I apologize, says here, I made a mistake. When I said that all the millions of people living on the face of this planet, everybody, you know, was honoring the great master. I forgot the Adventists. There's so few in number when you figure the billions and all people that didn't even think of mentioning it. So I'm sorry. Then he says, secondly, the reason why they can't be brought into the great deception, let me explain about it. Now he said, my next statement is going to upset some of you. But what I'm telling you is the honest truth. It is factual. It's reality. The fact that the Adventists observe the biblical Sabbath of creation and reverence the Creator on that day, it makes it impossible for the spirits to deceive them. They are given very special help and great spiritual insight. And he said, under these conditions, they are not ordinary people. And that stayed with me, man, just like this. And when I heard the word Adventist, when Sarah told me later on, which we're going to cover later, I asked him, I said, what denomination do you belong to? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. What's that again? He said, I'm a Seventh Adventist. I said, is that the same thing as Adventist? Oh yeah, he says, a lot of people call us the Adventists. They don't talk about the 70s, same thing. Boy, I was interested.
I bet you were. Now,
I wanted to know what his Bible said.
Yeah, I bet you did. Because that was the one group that under question only, the high priest of the demonic worship house.
Yeah.
The thing that he had said to you was, this is the one group that can't be deceived.
That's right.
And so somewhere back inside that that resistance you had came out, and you awoke.
A few months later, that experience, unique experience, was instrumental in helping me make a decision for Christ. And also, I had no hesitation to join myself to God's commandment-keeping people because of the fact that I knew what kind of people they were. And after having had 28 Bible studies in 1 week, I started to keep the Sabbath, forever. But you see, the time that I had these Bible studies, 4 hours per evening, we started at 7 o'clock and finished at 11 o'clock at night. We had this Bible study similar to what you showed me the other day, that you have in your pocket. The Bible studies were about an hour. There were questions, and then you looked at the verses that they gave you in the Bible, and you had your answer. It was so fantastic. And the Spirit of God was really ministering to me the graces of redemption. Every moment of all those Bible studies was precious. Precious, precious, precious.
Roger, at that time, your major language was French. You did not speak English, and all of this happened in the French language in Montreal. How long after you became a Seventh-day Adventist, or after you learned of Seventh-day Adventists, did you read the book Great Controversy by Ellen White?
Well, I joined the church. I first had a Bible study in October of '46. In April of '47, I was baptized into the church. In September of that year, Hilda and I got married. And the French church in Montreal gave us, as a wedding gift, the Conflict of the Ages series. And I had not read the Great Controversy up to then.
But then you read it.
Yeah.
And what went through your mind when you read the book Great Controversy, thinking back on the experience you'd had maybe just a year or so before?
That's right.
What went through your mind?
This person is inspired. This person has got knowledge that nobody else has on the face of the earth, except, the spiritists that I was mentioning, because it's so unique.
Well, I find it very remarkable that they were willing to share the strategy that Satan is working on with this group. Of course, their plan was that it would never get out.
That's right.
Under seal of death.
That's right. Their plan is that you don't have to worry about saying anything by the Great Master. Because as soon as anybody strays some, the spirits will tell the high priest right away it's taking place. They did with my Bible study by Wednesday night. I studied on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday night, the spirit counselor appeared to the high priest and says, you have one of your defectors. He says, that Mورنو guy, you're going to get rid of him. Because he's out there studying the Bible with the Adventists. The people that the Master hates most on the face of the earth. And the high priest